A simple single black mom fired on the spot, then her CO brother walked in and bought the company. The morning Atlanta sun streamed through the blinds of Tamara Williams' small apartment kitchen, casting golden stripes across the stack of bills she'd been avoiding. The red final notice stamp on her rent statement seemed to glow under the light, mocking her attempts to stay afloat. At 34, she'd mastered the art of stretching every dollar, but lately, the math simply didn't add up. "Mom, have you seen my blue folder?" 12-year-old Jamal called from his bedroom, his voice cracking slightly, another reminder that her little boy was growing faster than her paycheck could keep up with. "Check under your bed, baby." Tamara quickly shuffled the bills into a drawer as Jamal entered the kitchen. She'd perfected the art of hiding her worries behind a smile, determined that her son would never feel the weight she carried. Jamal appeared in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, unconsciously running his tongue over the metal braces they couldn't afford yet. The orthodontist's estimate sat hidden beneath the rent bill, another $3,800 that might as well have been $3 million. "Got it," he grinned, waving the blue folder. "I finished my science project. Mr. Campbell says I might win the competition this year." Tamara's heart swelled with pride as she handed him a bowl of cereal. "That's my genius. You're going to change the world someday. Maybe I'll invent robot teeth that straighten themselves," Jamal said, wincing slightly as he chewed. The sight made Tamara's decision even more concrete. Today was the day. After 5 years as an administrative assistant at Meridian Logistics, watching less qualified colleagues climb the ladder while she remained rooted to the ground floor, Tamara was finally applying for the team coordinator position that had opened last week. The $15,000 salary bump would mean braces for Jamal, no more eviction notices, and maybe, just maybe, one night without the gnawing anxiety that had become her constant companion. "Mrs. Delacroix next door will pick you up from school today," Tamara said, straightening Jamal's collar. "I might be working late." "The promotion?" Jamal's eyes brightened. He'd been her cheerleader since she'd mentioned the possibility, even helping her prepare for potential interview questions over dinner. "I'm submitting my application today." Tamara smoothed her freshly pressed blouse, purchased from the thrift store but indistinguishable from department store quality. Her resume, updated and polished to a shine, sat in a cream-colored folder in her bag, the culmination of night classes, volunteer work, and 5 years of exemplary performance reviews. The bus ride to Meridian's offices in downtown Atlanta gave Tamara time to rehearse her pitch. The position description might as well have been written with her in mind. Detail-oriented professional with administrative experience and exceptional organizational skills. She'd been doing half the job already, covering when the previous coordinator called in sick or disappeared for extended lunch breaks. What the listing didn't specify, but what Tamara understood all too well, was the unwritten qualifications that had kept her application in the drawer for years. Meridian's upper ranks remained stubbornly homogeneous, a sea of faces that looked nothing like hers. Every promotion season brought the same result, congratulating someone else while swallowing her disappointment. Not this time, she whispered to herself as the bus approached her stop. The universe seemed to agree. Even the notorious Atlanta traffic had cooperated, getting her to work 15 minutes early. The familiar scent of industrial carpet cleaner and coffee greeted Tamara as she swiped her badge. The early hour meant the lobby was still quiet, giving her a moment to gather her courage. In the elevator mirror, she checked her reflection one final time, hair neatly styled, makeup subtle but professional, shoulders back, chin high. "You've got this," she told her reflection. "They can't ignore you forever." At her desk, Tamara powered up her computer and prepared for the day's tasks while waiting for her supervisor to arrive. Craig Pearson, department manager for the past 2 years, typically rolled in around 9, coffee in hand, full of stories about his weekend golf games or his son's private school achievements. Today, Tamara noticed he was early. She watched through the glass partition as he settled into his office, his movements broadcasting irritation. Not ideal timing, but the application deadline was tomorrow, and Tamara wanted to deliver it personally rather than through the anonymous HR portal where it might conveniently get lost. like her previous attempts. Taking a deep breath, she gathered the folder and knocked on Craig's door. "What is it, Tamara?" "I've got the quarterly projections due this morning." He didn't look up from his computer. "Good morning, Craig. I wanted to submit my application for the team coordinator position. I've outlined my qualifications and included letters of recommendation from the coordinator position?" Craig finally glanced up, his expression shifting from irritation to something that made Tamara's stomach tighten. "You're applying for that?" "Yes," she continued, forcing confidence into her voice. "As you know, I've been handling many of those responsibilities already when needed, and my performance reviews have consistently exceeded expectations. I believe I'm well positioned to." Craig's laugh cut through her practiced speech. "Tamara, let's be realistic here. That position requires leadership qualities and executive presence. It's client-facing." The subtext hung in the air between them, unspoken but deafening. Tamara felt heat rising in her cheeks but kept her voice steady. "My qualifications match all the listed requirements. I've completed additional training in project management, and I've received commendations from clients for my problem-solving abilities." She extended the folder. "All the details are in my application." Craig made no move to take it. "Look, I appreciate your enthusiasm. But there are certain roles where you'd be a better fit. Why don't you focus on what you're good at? The team needs someone who can handle the administrative side so the coordinators can focus on strategy." Each word struck like a physical blow, but Tamara stood her ground. "I'd like to formally submit my application. The company policy states that all internal candidates meeting the basic qualifications will be considered." Something in Craig's expression hardened. "Fine." He finally took the folder, but instead of placing it on his desk or in his inbox, he held it loosely, as if it might contaminate him. "I'll make sure it gets to the right place." "Thank you." Tamara turned to leave, a small victory in simply having her application acknowledged. "Oh, and Tamara?" Craig called after her. "Just because you applied doesn't mean you'll get an interview. We have several highly qualified candidates already." The message was clear. Nothing had changed. Tamara returned to her desk, the brief surge of hope now flickering like a candle in a storm. But as she sat down and looked at the photo of Jamal on her desk, his gap-toothed smile from 3 years ago, before his teeth had started to crowd, she felt her resolve harden. This time would be different. It had to be. For both of them. The peaceful rhythm of Tamara's keyboard was shattered when Craig emerged from his office 3 hours later. She hadn't expected him to personally return her application so soon, if at all. The folder she'd handed him that morning was now clutched in his fist as he marched toward her desk, his face flushed with what appeared to be irritation. "Tamara, a word." His voice carried across the open office plan, drawing the attention of nearby colleagues. Without waiting for her response, he planted himself beside her desk, looming over her seated form. Tamara felt her heart rate accelerate but maintained her composure. "Yes, Craig? I've reviewed your application," he announced loud enough for the surrounding cubicles to hear. The office chatter diminished as curious ears tuned into their conversation. "And frankly, I'm disappointed that you've wasted both your time and mine." The silence that followed was deafening. Tamara could feel the weight of a dozen pairs of eyes on her back, including those of Jessica Barnes and Michael Torres, both of whom had received promotions within their first year while Tamara remained anchored to her administrative role despite her seniority. "I don't understand," Tamara said carefully, keeping her voice level. "My qualifications exceed the posted requirements." Craig's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Qualifications on paper aren't everything, Tamara. This position requires someone who fits the company culture, someone who can represent Meridian to our clients." Tamara felt her face grow warm, but years of practice helped her maintain her professional demeanor. "I've been representing Meridian for 5 years. I've handled client communications, coordinated schedules, and resolved issues that affect our reputation. I've never received a complaint. Being efficient at clerical work doesn't qualify you for leadership," Craig said with an exaggerated sigh, as if explaining something to a child. "Look, I'm trying to do you a favor here. People like you stay where you belong. The words hung in the air like poison. The office had gone completely silent now, everyone pretending to work while absorbing every word of the unfolding drama. Tamara felt something shift inside her, the quiet dignity she'd maintained for years giving way to a righteous anger that demanded expression. People like me? She repeated, her voice stronger than she expected. What exactly do you mean by that, Craig? His eyes narrowed. Don't make this into something it's not. I'm talking about your skill set, obviously. But they both knew he wasn't. The subtext was clear to everyone witnessing the exchange. I think we both know what you mean, Tamara said, standing slowly to meet his gaze. And I think it's important to name it. What you're doing right now is discriminatory and unprofessional. A collective intake of breaths swept through the office. No one had ever spoken to Craig like this before, especially not someone from the administrative pool. Craig's face contorted with anger. That's a serious accusation, Tamara. One that could be considered insubordination. Pointing out discrimination isn't insubordination, she countered, surprised by her own courage. It's my right as an employee. Something dangerous flashed in Craig's eyes. Without warning, he held up her carefully prepared application and tore it in half, the sound of ripping paper slicing through the stunned silence. Then, with deliberate slowness, he dropped the torn pieces into her trash bin. Consider this your final assessment as an employee of Meridian, he snarled. You're fired, effective immediately. Tamara stared at the torn application, her future dreams fluttering in fragments among coffee grounds and crumpled sticky notes. You can't fire me for applying for a promotion. I'm firing you for insubordination and creating a hostile work environment, Craig retorted, already reaching for the desk phone. Security will escort you out. Clear your desk in 5 minutes. The walls seemed to close in as Tamara processed what was happening. 5 years of exemplary service, of arriving early and staying late, of covering for others while never calling in sick herself, all erased in one vindictive moment. This isn't legal, she said, but her voice had lost its strength. Sue us, Craig sneered, knowing full well that a single mother living paycheck to paycheck couldn't afford the legal fees or the time such a battle would require. Human Resources will mail your final check. As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared at the entrance to the department. Tamara looked around at her colleagues, people she'd worked alongside for years, shared lunches with, celebrated birthdays with. Not one met her eyes. Not one stood up. With trembling hands but her head held high, Tamara began gathering her meager personal belongings, Jamal's framed school portrait, a small plant she'd nurtured for years, a cardigan she kept for cold days. Each item she placed in her bag felt like an admission of defeat, each movement a struggle against the tears threatening to fall. She wouldn't give Craig the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Whatever dignity he tried to strip from her, she would hold on to this one thing. As the security guards approached her desk, Tamara took one last look at the place that had been her professional home for 5 years. Then, without a word, she turned and walked toward the elevator, her footsteps echoing in the unnatural silence, unaware that her life was about to change forever. Outside Meridian's gleaming glass headquarters, the Atlanta humidity hung heavy in the air, matching the weight in Tamara's chest as she followed the security guards toward the exit. Her mind raced with calculations, how long her meager savings would last, whether she could file for unemployment after being fired, how she would tell Jamal that his braces would have to wait even longer. Personal items only, one of the guards muttered as they reached the lobby, gesturing toward her company-issued tablet. Company property stays. Tamara silently handed over the device, her face a careful mask. She perfected that expression long ago, the one that revealed nothing while screaming inside. The security guard avoided eye contact as he accepted the tablet, a flash of shame crossing his features before he looked away. The automatic doors slid open, releasing Tamara into the unforgiving afternoon heat. Her car, a 15-year-old Honda with temperamental air conditioning, sat in the far corner of the employee lot. The walk had never seemed so long. Just as she took her first step toward that uncertain future, a flash of movement caught her eye. A sleek black Bentley glided into the reserved parking section nearest the entrance, moving with silent precision into a spot marked "Executive Visitors Only." The luxury vehicle seemed to absorb the sunlight rather than reflect it, its dark finish immaculate and imposing against the sea of ordinary cars. Tamara paused despite herself. In 5 years at Meridian, she'd seen her share of luxury vehicles come and go, clients and executives flaunting their success. But this particular car commanded attention. Perhaps it was the timing, or perhaps it was the deliberate way it maneuvered, but something about its arrival felt significant. The security guards lingered awkwardly, uncertain whether their duties extended to escorting her all the way to her car or if the lobby doors marked the boundary of their responsibility. Tamara's momentary distraction gave them the excuse they needed. "You good from here?" one asked, already backing toward the building. Tamara nodded without looking at them. She'd be damned if they reported back to Craig that they'd seen her cry. As the guards retreated, the Bentley's driver's side door swung open. First, a hand appeared, dark skin, an expensive watch encircling the wrist, a signet ring glinting in the sunlight. Then a polished leather shoe touched the pavement, followed by the tall figure of a man in a perfectly tailored navy suit. Something about his profile, the set of his shoulders, the deliberate way he adjusted his cuffs, stirred a long-dormant recognition in Tamara. But it couldn't be. Not here, not now. The man turned, revealing his face, and Tamara's world tilted on its axis. Malcolm. Her brother. Her protector. Her hero and heartbreak all in one. The last time she'd seen Malcolm Reynolds in person had been at their mother's funeral 7 years ago. He'd flown in from California, stayed for exactly 36 hours, and disappeared again with promises to stay in touch that had gradually faded into perfunctory holiday texts and birthday cards with generous checks that Tamara had been too proud to cash. The distance between them wasn't just geographical. After their mother died, cleaning other people's offices until cancer claimed her at 52, Malcolm had thrown himself into his tech company with a vengeance, as if building his empire could somehow erase the helplessness they'd both felt watching their mother waste away. Meanwhile, Tamara had channeled her grief into raising Jamal and building a stable, if modest, life, the kind their mother had always wanted for them. And now here he was, walking with the confident stride of a man who expected doors to open before him, which they literally did as the building's security system recognized him and granted access before he'd even reached for his credentials. Malcolm hadn't seen her. He was focused on the building, his expression serious, a slim leather portfolio tucked under one arm. He moved with purpose, like a man on a mission. What was he doing here? Meridian was nowhere near the tech space that Malcolm dominated. The logistics company was firmly rooted in the old economy, shipping physical goods while Malcolm's world was one of algorithms and digital platforms. Before Tamara could process the shock or decide whether to call out to him, her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Delacroix. "Jamal's school called. He's in the nurse's office with a toothache. Can you pick him up?" Reality crashed back. Her job was gone. Her brother was a stranger. And her son needed her. Tamara turned toward her car, the tears she'd been holding back finally spilling over. The universe had a cruel sense of humor, bringing Malcolm back into her life at the precise moment everything was falling apart, and then immediately reminding her that she had no time to deal with that emotional complication. She'd made it halfway across the parking lot when she heard it. Her name, called in a voice she'd know anywhere, despite the years. "Tamara? Tamara Williams?" She froze, then slowly turned. Malcolm stood at the entrance, one hand still on the door, shock evident on his face. For a moment, they stared at each other across the expanse of asphalt, sister and brother, connected by blood but separated by choices made long ago. "What are you doing here?" he called, confusion clear in his voice. Tamara gestured helplessly at the security guards still visible through the glass doors, at her small box of possessions, at the tears streaking her face. "I worked here," she replied, emphasis on the past tense. "Until about 5 minutes ago." Malcolm's expression shifted from confusion to concern as he quickly closed the distance between them, his long strides eating up the parking lot. Up close, Tamara could see the subtle signs of the years that had passed. Fine lines around his eyes, a touch of gray at his temples. But he was undeniably the same brother who had once promised to change the world. "What happened?" he asked, his voice lower now, private. "Who did this?" The simple question, asked with genuine concern, nearly broke Tamara's carefully constructed composure. She swallowed hard, determined not to fall apart in the company parking lot. "It's a long story," she said, glancing at her phone. "And my son, your nephew, needs me to pick him up from school. He has a toothache." Malcolm's eyes widened. "Jamal? Is he okay?" The fact that he remembered her son's name caught Tamara off guard. She'd assumed Malcolm had mentally filed away his family connections, too busy with his tech empire to maintain any real ties. "He needs braces we can't afford," she said, the words coming out more bitter than intended. "And now I don't have a job, so—" She shrugged, the gesture encompassing the enormity of her situation. Malcolm checked his watch, a timepiece worth more than her annual salary, and seemed to come to a decision. "Give me 2 minutes. I need to make a call." Without waiting for her response, he stepped away and pulled out his phone, speaking in low, urgent tones. Tamara stood awkwardly beside the Bentley, acutely aware of the security guards watching from the lobby. When Malcolm returned, his expression had hardened into something she recognized from childhood, the look he'd worn when neighborhood bullies targeted her, the look that preceded swift and decisive action. "My assistant is arranging for Jamal to be picked up and taken to our family dentist," he said, his tone brooking no argument. "Dr. Patterson still has the practice in Buckhead. Remember him? He'll take care of the toothache and fit him for braces today. Malcolm, I can't afford." He waved away her concern. "It's handled. Jamal will be fine. Now I need you to tell me exactly what happened in there." He nodded toward the Meridian building. Something in his tone made Tamara hesitate. "Why are you here, Malcolm? What's your connection to Meridian?" Malcolm's jaw tightened. "I'm a silent investor. We've been gradually increasing our stake over the past 18 months. Today was supposed to be a routine board meeting to finalize our controlling interest acquisition." The pieces clicked into place. "You're buying Meridian?" "I already have," he confirmed. "The paperwork is being finalized this afternoon." The irony was almost too much. Her estranged brother had been invisibly connected to her workplace all this time, and now, on the day she lost everything, he appeared like some corporate guardian angel. "I was fired for applying for a promotion," Tamara said, the words tumbling out now. "My supervisor, Craig Pearson, tore up my application in front of everyone and said people like me should stay where they belong." Malcolm's expression darkened. "Craig Pearson," he repeated, as if memorizing the name. "And the rest? When I called him out on his discrimination, he fired me for insubordination and had security escort me out." Malcolm was already moving back toward the building, a controlled fury evident in every line of his body. "Come with me." "Malcolm, what are you?" "Do you trust me, Tam?" he asked, using her childhood nickname for the first time in years. The question hung between them, laden with history. The big brother who had protected her from playground taunts, who had worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table when their mother's illness made her miss shifts, who had eventually left for college and a life that took him further and further from their shared roots. "I don't know," she answered honestly. His face softened. "Fair enough. But right now, I'm asking you to give me a chance to make this right." Before she could respond, he was already striding toward the entrance, his phone to his ear again. "Kevin, I need immediate access to the security footage from the administrative floor, approximately." He checked his watch. 15 minutes ago. "Yes, full audio. Send it to my tablet now." Tamara hurried to catch up, her heart pounding. "Malcolm, you can't just waltz in there and—" "I own 63% of Meridian Logistics as of 9 o'clock this morning," he said calmly. "I can do whatever I want." The security guards straightened as they approached, recognition dawning on their faces as they connected Tamara to the imposing executive beside her. "Mr. Reynolds?" one began nervously. "We didn't realize that she's my sister?" Malcolm finished, his voice glacial. "Clearly. Your badges, please." Without a word, both men handed over their security credentials. "You're suspended pending investigation," Malcolm informed them. "My team will contact you." As they entered the lobby, Tamara felt like she was floating through a dream. The receptionist's eyes widened as she recognized Malcolm from the company announcement about the acquisition, then grew even wider as she registered Tamara's presence beside him. "The board meeting," Malcolm stated, not a question. "Conference room A, sir. They're waiting for you." Malcolm nodded, then turned to Tamara. "Ready?" She wanted to say no, to flee back to her car and the familiar territory of coping alone. But something in her brother's determined expression called to a long-dormant part of her, the part that believed justice was possible, that wrongs could be righted. "Ready," she confirmed, squaring her shoulders. Together, they stepped into the elevator, the doors closing on a chapter of Tamara's life even as a new one began. The elevator ride to the executive floor lasted only 30 seconds, but for Tamara, it stretched into eternity. She stole a glance at her brother's profile. The determined set of his jaw reminded her of their mother, that same unflinching resolve in the face of injustice. "What exactly are you planning to do?" she whispered. Malcolm's eyes remained fixed on the climbing floor numbers. "I'm going to show them who they really are." His tablet pinged, and he quickly reviewed something on the screen. "And who we are." The elevator doors opened directly into a reception area where a nervous assistant stood waiting. "Mr. Reynolds, the board has been asking." Her eyes darted to Tamara in confusion. "This is my sister, Tamara Williams," Malcolm stated matter-of-factly. "She'll be joining us." The assistant nodded, too professionally trained to show surprise. "Of course. They're all assembled." Malcolm paused before the heavy oak doors of conference room A. "Wait here for one moment," he instructed Tamara. "I need to set the stage." Before she could protest, he slipped inside, closing the door behind him. Tamara stood awkwardly in the hallway, acutely aware of her wrinkled blouse and the small box of personal items still clutched in her hands. Through the door, she could hear the muffled sounds of greetings and introductions. After what felt like an eternity, the assistant's phone buzzed. "He's asking for you now," she said, moving to open the door. Tamara took a deep breath and stepped into the boardroom. The scene before her was surreal. 12 people sat around a massive table, including Meridian's CEO, Arthur Holcomb, and various executives she recognized but had never spoken to directly. Craig sat near the middle, his face flushed with agitation. All eyes turned to her as she entered. Malcolm stood at the head of the table, his tablet connected to the room's projection system. On the large screen behind him was a paused image from the security footage, Craig standing over Tamara's desk, her application in his hands. "Ladies and gentlemen," Malcolm said smoothly, "as I was saying, before we finalize our acquisition agreement, I'd like to address some concerning cultural issues I've uncovered. This morning, my sister, whom I had no idea worked for Meridian until today, was fired for applying for a promotion." Craig's face drained of color as he looked from Malcolm to Tamara and back again. "Mr. Reynolds, there's been a misunderstanding. Ms. Williams was terminated for insubordination and—" "Play footage," Malcolm interrupted. The room fell silent as the video began. Every word of their confrontation was captured with crystal clarity, from Craig's dismissal of her qualifications to his damning statement. "People like you stay where you belong." The footage continued unforgivingly through his tearing up her application and calling security. When it ended, the silence in the room was absolute. "That's only the beginning," Malcolm continued, his voice deceptively calm. "While waiting for this meeting, I had my team pull some interesting data." He swiped on his tablet, and the screen changed to display a series of graphs. Meridian's hiring and promotion statistics, broken down by gender and race. The visuals told a damning story, a diverse entry-level workforce that grew progressively wider and more male with each step up the corporate ladder. Wage disparities. Another graph appeared, showing significant pay gaps that couldn't be explained by seniority or qualification. And perhaps most concerning, HR complaint resolution rates. The final slide showed dozens of discrimination complaints that had been closed with no action taken. Malcolm turned to face the stunned executives. My company doesn't just invest in businesses, we invest in people and values. What I've seen today reflects none of the values stated in your corporate mission statement. He walked slowly around the table, stopping behind Craig's chair. Mr. Pearson, you're terminated, effective immediately. Please leave your company property with reception on your way out. Craig shot to his feet. You can't. I can and I have, Malcolm said quietly. Security is waiting to escort you out. The irony shouldn't be lost on you. As Craig stormed out, Malcolm addressed Arthur Holcomb directly. As for senior leadership, I'll need resignations from those who fostered this environment. My team has identified the key players. He slid a document across the table. These 5 individuals, including yourself, Arthur. Holcomb's face reddened. This is outrageous. One isolated incident doesn't justify this overreaction. Malcolm's laugh was cold. Isolated? Let me tell you about another isolated incident. 30 years ago, my mother cleaned offices in a building not unlike this one. Every night for 15 years, she emptied trash cans and scrubbed toilets, while attending night school to earn her business certificate. He paced the length of the room, the personal story commanding everyone's attention. 8 times she applied for an administrative position. 8 times she was passed over for someone with less experience but the right look. When she finally asked why, her supervisor told her people would be uncomfortable with someone like her at the front desk. Tamara felt tears welling in her eyes. Their mother had never told her this story. That supervisor looked exactly like you, Arthur. Spoke exactly like you. Thought exactly like you. Malcolm's voice never rose, but its intensity filled the room. My mother died still cleaning other people's offices. But her children are rewriting that ending. He turned to face the entire board. Meridian Logistics will be transformed, starting today. Those who can embrace that transformation are welcome to leave with generous severance packages. Those who stay will build something better. The stunned silence that followed was broken only by the soft ping of an incoming message on Malcolm's tablet. Ah, he said, checking the screen. Dr. Patterson reports that Jamal is doing well. The braces will be fitted next week. He looked up at Tamara with a gentle smile that transported her back to childhood, the protective big brother who had once promised that things would get better. And for the first time in years, she believed they might. 3 weeks later, Tamara stood at the entrance of what had once been Craig's office, now transformed with her own touches, a small potted plant from Jamal, framed photos of her family, and a vintage poster of Maya Angelou with the quote, "You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated." The nameplate on the door read, Tamara Williams, Director of Diversity and Talent Development. She ran her fingers over the engraved letters, still unable to fully believe the whirlwind of changes that had swept through her life. Jamal's new braces gleamed when he smiled. Malcolm had become a regular presence at their dinner table, and Meridian Logistics was undergoing a transformation that sent ripples through Atlanta's corporate community. Her phone buzzed with a text from Malcolm. Board approved your full proposal. Green light on everything. Proud of you, Tam. Tamara smiled, recalling their late-night strategy sessions where they'd mapped out Meridian's cultural overhaul. What had begun as Malcolm's righteous fury had evolved into something more meaningful, a joint mission to create the workplace their mother had deserved but never found. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Angela Chin, formerly an overlooked analyst from the research department, stood there with a nervous smile. The team is ready whenever you are, she said. Everyone's in the conference room. Tamara gathered her presentation materials and followed Angela down the hallway. The same corridor she'd walked thousands of times as an administrative assistant now felt different, partly because people acknowledged her with respectful nods, but mostly because of how she carried herself. The conference room fell silent as she entered. 25 employees, a diverse cross-section of Meridian's workforce that she'd personally selected for the Talent Identification Committee, waited expectantly. Some faces she recognized from her years in administration, people who had never spoken to her when she was just an assistant. Others were new hires, brought in during the first wave of Malcolm's restructuring. "Good morning," Tamara began, her voice strong and clear. "Thank you all for volunteering for this committee. Your role will be crucial in reshaping how Meridian identifies, develops, and promotes talent." She distributed folders containing her comprehensive plan, the result of countless hours synthesizing academic research on workplace equity with her own hard-earned experiences. "Our first task is to address the team coordinator position that opened last month," she continued, unable to suppress a small smile at the irony. "But we'll be doing it differently this time." Tamara turned to the digital display and pulled up the new job posting she'd crafted. At the bottom, in bold letters, was the line that had caused heated debate in the executive suite until Malcolm had finally backed her play. "All applications welcome, especially those who've been overlooked for too long." "This isn't just a statement," Tamara explained. "It's a commitment backed by concrete changes to our hiring and promotion processes." She walked them through the innovations: blind resume reviews, standardized interview questions, diverse hiring panels, and transparent salary bands that eliminated negotiation disparities. But the centerpiece was the mentorship program that would pair senior leaders with promising employees from underrepresented groups. "Some will call this preferential treatment," Tamara acknowledged, addressing the elephant in the room. "It isn't. It's correction. For generations, qualified people have been passed over because they didn't fit someone's idea of what leadership looks like. We're not lowering the bar, we're removing the artificial barriers that kept deserving people from reaching it." As the team engaged with her presentation, asking thoughtful questions and offering suggestions to strengthen the initiatives, Tamara felt a sense of purpose that transcended personal vindication. This wasn't just about her anymore, or even about Malcolm's redemption for years of absence. It was about their mother, about Jamal, about every person who'd ever been told, explicitly or implicitly, to stay where they belong. The meeting concluded with a unanimous endorsement of her plan. As the room cleared, Tamara noticed Malcolm standing in the doorway, a quiet witness to her leadership. "How long have you been there?" she asked when they were alone. "Long enough," he replied, pride evident in his voice. "Mom would have loved seeing you in action." Tamara gathered her notes, emotion welling in her throat. "She would have been proud of both of us." Malcolm nodded, uncharacteristically silent for a moment. "I spent years building my company, thinking I was honoring her by becoming successful. But this, what you're doing here, this is what she really wanted. Not just success, but change." Through the glass walls, they could see the office buzzing with activity, people engaged in conversation, collaborating across departments that had previously operated in silos. The culture shift was already tangible, a living testament to what was possible when merit truly mattered more than appearance. As they walked toward the elevator to meet Jamal for dinner, Tamara caught her reflection in the polished doors, shoulders back, head high, a woman who had transformed from victim to visionary in the span of a month. But the greatest transformation wasn't in her title or office. It was in her conviction that the world could actually change if enough people refused to accept the status quo. "Ready?" Malcolm asked as the elevator arrived. Tamara smiled, the word carrying layers of meaning between them. "More than ever." The doors closed on the past as they stepped forward together into a future they were building, word by word, policy by policy, life by life, into something better than either of them had dared to imagine.